Paul Derell is a gallery owner and novelist who started out as a starving artist. That's why, as a gallery owner, he has such compassion for others coming up. Paul joins us now. Even some gallery owners are among the starving artist category, are they not?
Oh, you bet. Probably 80% of all galleries that first open wind up closing within 2 to 3 years.
The picture that we have of the beginning artist, sometimes artists who have been doing what they do for many, many years, is that of an unsuccessful, starving, depressed person. Is that really the truth?
In the early years, it sure can be, because a lot of artists embark on their careers without proper information about how to launch their career, how to structure it step by step, how to begin approaching galleries. What do you do before you're in a gallery? How do you get your first exhibits? How do you get the press to cover those exhibits? How do you take the necessary steps to have eventually a national presence so you can be in galleries not just in one city like Miami, but in several cities: Miami, Philadelphia, possibly New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. For a lot of people, when they first got out of art school, that seems an absolute impossibility. With the right information, it's a certainty.
Is this a how-to book for beginning artists?
Yeah, it's partly that. It's also partly a memoir, because my journey was really tough. As we were talking about a while ago, just as I thought my gallery was going to break out, it caught fire when I was broken and uninsured, and we had to start over. And I had to really work hard after that to get my artists established with a national presence in Washington and Los Angeles and Santa Fe and on the East Coast as well.
You had a bout with the syndrome, and you had the depression and the failures.
Sure.
How did you break out of that?
Well, to be honest, I think for most of the human race, depression is a fact of life in an ongoing sense. You learn to deal with it as time goes by through accomplishment and through understanding that really you're not as important as other people you can give to. In my case, that's just not artists that I've made successful, but artists who are trying to emerge now, artists who are struggling, especially when I do a massive project. We're getting ready to do a big sculpture project for one of the NASCAR tracks. I love involving artists from the inner city, especially from the high school level. And so by constantly giving like that, my importance is diminished, and what I give to other people is much more important. But of course, establishing some form of success while you're giving along the way, I mean, that's a great thing in combating any depression. And success after success for us, the National D-Day Memorial, projects in the Rotunda in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol building, projects in L.A., I mean, that's a great success to be proud of. But 14 years ago, all of it seemed impossible. That's why I've written the book, to explain how we achieved this from out of the Midwest and how we've gained a national presence. You
know, we often think of actors as being in a very glamorous world, a successful world. Truth is, about actors, only a very few of them ever make it, and those are the names we know.
Sure.
The vast majority of actors don't make it, and you know, they're typically waiters during the day.
Probably 99% of all actors, just like with writers, about 95%, and with artists, probably only about 5% of all visual artists really make a living from their work. The number could be far greater. Only about 5 to 10% of the American public actually collects art. In reality, 40% can afford to collect art. The other 30% feel shut out of the mainstream of the art world for many reasons, snobbery being a primary factor, which I ran against all the time. And all these things work against the possibilities of artists breaking out and making a living from what they love to do.
So what is the key, Paul, if it's going to take many years for the few artists that are going to make it to actually make it? How do they survive? How do they eat?
Well, man, you got to have a day job that doesn't drive you out of your mind. For instance, if you're a painter, maybe it's not wise to take a day job where you're an illustrator all day and you're giving your constant creative passion to that particular job, that corporation, maybe it's a newspaper. That might drain everything you're trying to do as a painter, so at the end of the day, you've got nothing left to paint. You might want to consider some other job that is more inspiring in a different sense but doesn't drain you, or you may want to consider self-employment. I mean, in this wealthiest of nations, self-employment is always an option if you can just figure out how to put something together to do that with.
At one point, you lost everything.
Pretty close, yeah.
Tell us the story.
Well, we were so broke that I had to let the insurance on the gallery lapse. This is about the same time that I had to reassess everything I was doing wrong, because we weren't getting the national launch we were looking for. This is about 8 years ago. And to reassess things, one day I took a walk on the east side of Kansas City, a rough part of town, to remind myself of how good I had it, even though I was deeply in debt. No sooner did I make that reassessment and decide I was going to restructure everything, my marketing, my promotions, everything else, the gallery caught fire, we were uninsured, and I lost, pretty close to everything. But I still felt there was a reason for staying in this business, for guiding all these artists, for continuing to write my novels, the whole gig. And if I hadn't felt that intuitive guidance, I wouldn't have stayed with it.
You came back stronger.
Adversity is one of the greatest teachers in life. And so, sure, it
Dorrell,
taught me enormously.
Thank you very much. Good luck with the book. And let me tell you about these signings. The book, again, is called Living the Artist's Life. And Paul will be talking with readers and signing copies tonight at Books and Books in Coral Gables. That event begins at 8 tonight. And then tomorrow night, he'll be at the Barnes & Noble in Fort Lauderdale on Federal Highway beginning at 7:30.